Um, okay, so thank you. Thank you, crowd, for coming to our workshop. I'm one of the directors of Triple Bottom Line Accounting, but I'm not an accountant. And with the help of Alasdair, who you've just listened to on the panel, from Maple Cone, we've been developing an ESG impact narrative tool. And our idea is to absolutely simplify this and make it and break all the barriers that are stopping very busy small businesses from trying to do something about it. So you hear the jargon, you see that you've got to pass these certain accreditations or targets, and you're just too busy to even get your head around that and even know how to start. So it's all about starting that journey. What we're rolling out is a very simple and affordable way to start working out how what your carbon. We're talking about carbon today, so what your carbon emissions are, and how you can reduce them. So we just wanted. We're not going to get through the whole thing today in 15 minutes, but this is kind of what we'd like to do. We're going to show you the triple bottom line carbon foot report from the 12 months of 2020. And we're not going to tell you what we decided to do to reduce our carbon footprint. We can at the end, and we can send you the PowerPoint if we don't get there. We're going to ask you to tell us what you think we could do. So imagine this was our current, our current situation, and really get that sort of the ideas flowing. But it'd be really, really useful. We haven't got a lot of time. If you could perhaps just tell us, if you went around the room, what you think for your business might be the biggest challenge relevant to climate change, the thing that the biggest obstacle or challenge. Would anybody like to just kick that off very, very quickly? Anyone here that is a SME? No, nobody here from SME?
Sort of.
Yeah?
I was here representing a community group, but I'll speak according to my sole business. Sole trader business. Really, if I'm moving online, then the biggest impact of that is all of that hardware and infrastructure and so on. How sustainable is that? Because I used to be an environmental science teacher. I don't think it's particularly sustainable, but it's how we are. It's a real dilemma of where your ethic lies and where reality, where you get income from.
I think that's a really good point, and for us as an accountancy business, you'll see that our biggest emissions are Scope 3 emissions, which I'll explain if anyone needs to that explainer in a minute, which is basically we buy in a lot of software, and that software, the servers are in the cloud somewhere, probably in the Virginia corridor in the USA, probably managed by Amazon Web Services, and most likely powered by fossil fuel.
It's really scary stuff when you start to think. Well, you think about it. It doesn't take much to dig beneath. We've all got our mobile phones. That has a huge impact.
Rare earth, metals, all those things. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else got an obstacle that they can see at the moment?
Yeah, can go ahead. So I'm Andrew Summers, Transport East. I guess we're a partnership of local authorities, business organisations. There's only 4 of us in the team. So I'll come at this at 2 angles. So in terms of our core business, it is to decarbonise transport in the east of England for investment. And I guess from this perspective, for business travel, a lot of businesses have told us it's the foundation from car use for the commute, for example, and then through everyday business, how do you change your fleets to lower emissions? So 2 really big things there. But how do you change your car use, I guess, really resonates with us as Team 4. We could say we're similar to some SMEs. We're increasingly, post-COVID, now going out across the region. Today's example, drove here. In an ideal world, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
How do you get to places like this? But our everyday business is going out and meeting people across the region. How do you do that sustainably, basically, in places that have poor passenger transport? We talk about buses there.
Yes, we will.
And not everyone has an electric car yet. Yeah. How do you commute and get to places in a more sustainable way.
So yeah, no, it's a really good point, and hopefully we can come back to that in a moment. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add, whilst I'm Michelle Gordon, I work for Labour and Mid-Suffolk District Council.
Okay.
But as a business, we own a huge amount of social housing. We need to look at decarbonising the social housing stock that we own in terms of making it more energy efficient and suitable for homes of the future, looking at energy production, energy storage, and making sure that the houses are safe and sustainable. But we also have a massive waste fleet, and we have just committed to using waste oil to power that waste fleet.
Yeah.
But we are, whilst we're a council, we are a very large business, and we have a lot of different services that we have to invest in. Each one of those services has got multiple facets that we have to try and unpick in order to be able to change the way the business operates.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that we talk to our customers about is, well, you've got to look at what you've got to do, but you also look at what you've done, okay, and you sort of think, right, I have started, but then how can we feasibly do all those things? We're not going to do them all in 12 months, so, what are the low-hanging fruit, perhaps, that we can tackle first to get on that journey? So I'll come back to some of that as well. So I won't go through all the introductions, but we had this statistic repeated throughout the day, which is that 99% of all UK business and industry is SMEs, and the total emissions of business and industry in the UK is the 25% of all our emissions come from business and industry. So I say to our clients, it doesn't matter how small you are, we've all got a part to play. It's a whole systems approach here, and that's a whole system approach to public transport, to efficiency in social housing or whatever it might be. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the terms Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3. A lot of people just measure their Scope 1 and 2 CO2e emissions. So the CO2e and all emissions, but you can see the emissions across the top of the screen there, that are equivalent to the impact of CO2. So we say that your Scope 1, your direct ones, it's actually like what fossil fuel perhaps you're burning in your building. So gas is the most obvious one. Yeah, okay. Scope 2 for us as an accountancy practice is the electricity. So obviously it's burnt elsewhere, but we're using that power in our building to power up all our devices and that sort of thing. And Scope 3 can be upstream and downstream. And we work in a very energy efficient building. In fact, it has been plugged as the most energy, it's a passive house building, a business hub, the most energy efficient, or the greenest building, I think is what they call it, in the whole of Europe. So our emissions are quite low at Scope 1 and Scope 2, but they are enormous when we look at our supply chain, in particular the Scope 3. So for us, that's where we've got to concentrate, because that's where we're making a big impact. And the last thing I just wanted to quickly say is this question I quite often get asked in workshops and webinars is, okay, I run a business and I really, really want to do this, but how do I get my team on board? And my team might be my management team, or if you're a small business, it might be your whole 5, 10, 15 employees, yeah? And it's only going to work if you get them on board. So I love this graphic because it's about having to inform them, and this is what we do in our target setting workshops. We work with your whole team and we say, let's just the facts. What are the facts about climate change? How serious is this really? Make it really understandable, and consult with all your stakeholders ideally, but start off with your team, your employees, and what would they like to do? What can we do together? Whatever you come up with as your targets and your action plans, you need to have that consent of everybody. And if the ideas are coming from them, then you've automatically got that buy-in, and then you empower them to do it, and they become part of that change, and they become proud of that change. So one of our mottos is, what's your story? Are you proud of what you do? Yeah. And sometimes we think we haven't done enough good, but actually we have. Yeah. And we all can do more. So Alasdair, I'm just going to pass on the mic for you. There and there in your pocket. And Alasdair's going to talk you through. Alasdair worked as an external consultant for our business, although we are collaborating on this. It was good to have somebody from outside our team talk to our staff rather than the bosses talking to the staff. Got someone out there who can say, right, okay, we've measured the carbon footprint, this is what we've got, what are we going to do as a team? You know, fantastic 2 hours, we did it online during the pandemic and got total buy-in.
So looking at the TBLA's carbon footprint, we did some analysis of what the purchases and the sales and etc. that TBLA were doing in order to make some assessment of the upstream and downstream scope 3 emissions, and also understood from the building itself what the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions were. So we ended up with a breakdown like this, which I appreciate the text is a bit small, so we will move on to this one, which demonstrates the fact that what Fran was just saying, which is that scope 3 emissions dwarf the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Kind of expected because of the nature of the organisation and the office that it's in. But what was interesting was the fact that it was only 1.8 tonnes per employee, which is actually really quite low. So, you know, credit to TBLA for that. They've already quite a long way down the journey, but they're starting from a good place, shall we say? But they've got some work to do to get to the last bit. So the interest really comes into scope 3, and a lot of people try and ignore scope 3, but I firmly believe that actually we should look at scope 3, because it's all very well saying scope 3 is somebody else's problem, but I don't think they are. Scope 3 is something that you can do things about. And looking at the scope 3, it's very obvious that purchases of all sorts of stuff, and I'll come into that in a minute, purchases account for about 50% of the scope 3 emissions. And then the other half is roughly divided between commuting emissions and the home working emissions. So this was measured partway through the pandemic, so we had to make an allowance for the fact that part of the year was during pre-pandemic, so there was commuting going on, and part of the year was during pandemic, so there was home working going on. But that was interesting in itself, because obviously there is a little bit of a challenge going on there as to some organisations are thinking, well, should we actually not have an office and have everybody working at home? Because that would mean we close the office and save all the heating associated with the office. But actually then you're substituting everybody's heating at home, certainly during the winter months. Maybe the answer is that everybody works at home during the summer and then works in the office in the winter. I don't know. Andrew?
Really interested about the home working versus commuting sort of trade-off.
Yeah.
Because sort of inherently you sort of think of people who are commuting less and saving carbon, but that home working is possibly a bit higher than I thought it might be. Carbon emissions. Just wondering how different does that look before the pandemic?
Well, yes, we don't have those figures, but it's really interesting that we had sort of like March to August, do you have a seat, where we were all working from home.
Yeah.
And then in August, because we've got quite a young team and they were really missing that social interaction, we had to weigh up not just the environmental impact, but their mental well-being as well. Okay, they needed to be interacting with each other, and just seeing a head on the screen wasn't the same. So we've got commuting going on from January to March and from August to December, although less people commuted in that time because we had the hybrid model.
Can I just ask again on that homework? I'm assuming because you're working, your office is a passive house office, you're incredibly energy efficient. Are you then assessing the people's home?
Yes, so
as being much less energy efficient?
That's the office consumption there.
But you've less chance to influence the home.
The home, exactly.
We have a chance to influence it, but which Alasdair will talk about. But yes, initially when you start this journey, you have no idea how each person is getting their energy in their homes, or how well insulated their homes are, and all those other parts of that equation.
Yep. And also that you then start to get into some interesting questions as to is it part of the employer's role to start to influence the employee or to have that debate with the employee as to whether they ought to be buying a green tariff or not? I'll leave the question hanging, but it's an interesting question, but my thought is on that subject is that I think it's having the dialogue that's important, raising the awareness that's important, which is back to a previous slide that Fran talked about. It's having that dialogue and raising the importance of it and getting people to start to think about these things, because if you don't start to think about them, then things don't happen.
And you're presumably modelling it as well, aren't you? You're modelling.
Yeah, we asked
ideal.
exactly. We asked people how do they get to work, how far do they come, and we asked them what sort of house do you live in or flat do you live in, and do you have a green tariff or do you not have a green tariff, and that was it. And from there we approximated. We heard earlier today there's no point in going after the 6th decimal place. It really is irrelevant. You know, the guy from the malting company, Muntons, the malting company, said, it's absolutely better to be approximately right. That's good enough. It's fine. We know that purchases are the big issue. We know that home working is something that we need to think about. We know that commuting is something that we need to think about. But the big one is purchasing. So if we go on to the next slide, which expand this slide, it's just interesting to see the split between cars and buses, for example. The majority of that is cars, mainly because there was a relatively small number of people using the bus, but also they were travelling a relatively short distance, and it's much more efficient from a carbon point of view. Home energy, heating was the large majority of it. I won't even try and do the calculation in my head, but sort of 8 times or something the electricity carbon. And then when it comes to purchasing, this was all done through economic modelling. Looking at an amount spent on, for example, advertising was probably going to produce a carbon emission of X kilograms, whatever it was. So it's just really it's an approximation, but it gives us an indication as to where the focal points are. So that brings us to the exam question for today. What would we do about it? What should we do about it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got examples. I've got a presentation into it.
Okay.
Good timing.
So we could tell you what we did, but we
thought-
think it would be more helpful for people to start thinking,
And think about it in the context of your own organisations or your own lives as well. And what could it be? So what do you think? I'll put this slide back up now. You know what the question is. Sorry.
Review your procurement.
Yeah, absolutely. Good thought. Yes, procurement policy now in place.
Yeah,
In order
and
to
it's
reduce-
sustainable procurement. It's published on our website. If you go onto our website, you can see it in the footer with all the policies, and it's very clear and it's also actionable. Yeah.
Has that had a knock-on effect in terms of the cost of some of the things that you're procuring? So you might reduce your emissions, but increase your corporate cost.
Yes and no, because if you're buying more locally, what we've lost is the instant gratification. I can order something from Amazon and get it in less than 24 hours. I might need a new lead for a new member of staff's new laptop or something like that, and we haven't got the right connector for it. Okay, but actually we can make do for a couple of days and get it more locally by not using Amazon. And I know Amazon was used a lot today, and I know there's a lot of good things that they're doing, but they're still outweighed by the social and environmental unimpressive things that are happening at Amazon, quite honestly. So we actually do boycott Amazon, full stop, and that's part of our procurement policy. Yeah.
Not Amazon. Also.
I think education.
Yes, very much so. Yes, and that's education of.
Advertising of people how to use buildings and what is out there and what the future is. We don't do anything what we like to do.
Yes.
And actually how can we do what we can do.
When you say people, from the point of view of an SME, such as a small accounting practice, what people should we be educating?
Well, my staff, my customers, my visitors.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Supply chain,
Yeah.
investors, fell thing, yes. And one of the big advantages of doing all of this is that it makes the organisation that much more attractive to all of those stakeholders, doesn't it? More attractive to buy from, more attractive to work for, more attractive to invest your money in. So it's lots of ticks to do this sort of thing.
Within the commuting group part, sort of the grey part, I guess there's a number of things that you might have done, particularly around promoting sustainable transport modes, offering incentives to staff to maybe travel by public transport, active travel, maybe grants for EVs, that type of thing.
Yeah, shall I
Yep.
talk? Because we're running out of time. So the purchasing policy was our chief big thing, because that's going to make a difference. And I will just say, before I answer the question, because I think someone's going to come in a minute, one of the things that we can do with our supply chain, part of the education thing, is that we can lobby them. We can say, right, we're not going to stop buying from you, because we need that bookkeeping software or we need that accountancy program, because we're not going to stop buying it, but we are going to start thinking about, you know, where we might buy in the future. What is your program? Have you got a net zero program? And if you have, we don't mind that you're not carbon neutral or net zero yet, but the fact that you're on that journey makes you more favourable. So we're really pushing that way. But in terms of the commuting, okay, interestingly, the shortest distance that 2 of our members of staff have to come, we're now 12, they take the bus, but they have to go from outside the city into the city to change bus to come out of the city. So they actually make the longest journey. So that's crazy, yeah? So we are gradually introducing Octopus Energy. Have got a new scheme, I don't know if you heard of it, but it's Octopus EV, and they do everything for the employer and the employee. So it's an end-to-end service. So we will be leasing cars. We've actually just started doing it for our employees that need a car to commute to work. They get a brand new car. The tax incentives for small businesses are amazing, and the benefit in kind tax to the employee is very minimal still, and therefore and they get a charger put in, everything. Yeah. Okay, I realise we need to
Yeah,
to
I'm
pack
sorry
in.
to interrupt, but if we could start finishing up, so we can go back to the atrium, that'd be
Okay,
great.
yeah. So just to add to that, our moral dilemma with that is that fair for the people who walk in and cycle in because they only live down the road? Yeah. Okay. So it's looking at, yes, they'll take a salary sacrifice in order to get a brand new company car to come to work. But other people need to have something in the equivalent of that to make it fair. Okay, so if what they're getting is worth, say, £2,000 a year, upgrading their pay, then what's on offer for the people who don't want or need a car? So that it's not an easy solution, and it's not the only solution, because neither Alasdair or I believe that EVs are the solution. Absolutely not. There are so many environmental problems with electric. We're fully aware of that. And the dream would be, and it's been touched on today, is a properly integrated, sustainable transport system. If I go to work in my EV, I do. My husband and I both, we have a company EV already. It's a 25-mile commute, okay, 45-minute drive. If I go on the train or bus, the end-to-end journey round commutes 4 hours, and that doesn't include the waiting time. Yeah, okay, or the late bus, or the train that gets cancelled just as you get to the station. And I can walk to the station in 20 minutes. It's a beautiful walk along a beautiful footpath, and so I enjoy it. It's good for my well-being. Yeah. But then it's still going to be 2 hours end to end by the time I get to the train station, wait for the bus that's going to take me to the UEA, get off that bus, walk to work. So it's not comparable. I need to get to work. I prefer working from home for that reason, but I need to be seeing the staff as well. So there's lots more we could say, and we have got our solutions. You can actually find them on our website. We do have our whole action plan on our carbon footprint report. And you can see what we did. We are a carbon neutral company, but what we want to be is a net zero company. So I don't have anything else that you wanted to stress out.
No, I think it's a really interesting journey for every organisation to go down. But the two things I would say is, number one is start. Start small. Keep it simple. Don't try and solve all the problems, and don't try and do everything. Start by doing the simple stuff, even if that's only changing all of the bulbs to LEDs as they glow, to reduce the energy consumption of the building. Whatever it is, influence your supply chain and influence your landlord. It's all of those things that we can do, but keep it simple but do start. And we're here to help if you'd like.
Yeah. If you'd like our pack of slides, which actually simplifies the process, I think the easiest thing is pick up a flyer from our store, which has got our emails really easy to find, triple bottom line accounting, okay, and Fran at triplebottomlineaccounting.com, or just pick up a leaflet which explains our service as well, and we'll email you the pack, which just shows you what we actually did choose to do, and pretty much the ideas that you've suggested. So thank you.
Thanks everybody.
That's really interesting.